What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of The Lawyer. You know it's been a little while. We are in full vacation mode, but I want to come on here, give you an update on my trip, tell you some of the fun things that have happened so far, what is still to come, and answer kind of two sections of questions I've been getting a lot, which everything has basically been focused on what's been sent to me is Karen Reed. Her civil case, what it's looking like, what the challenges may be, what the elements of the case that the plaintiff, John O'Keefe's family, may be able to prove, which ones will be more difficult to prove. And then we will also discuss a potential 1983 action, which people have asked me about. I don't know if she has filed anything for it. I don't know if she's done the prereqs to even be able to file something like that. But we'll talk about what that is and why it's usually so difficult, but what she has in her favor and going against her for that type of action. We have filed those kinds of actions in the past, so we know about them. So we'll get into that. And then throw your comments, questions about Greece, questions about whatever it is you're watching. Let me know what you're watching in the comment section. I'm excited to hang out with you guys for a little bit, even though it's not live. Maybe the next one will be. Let's get into it. So we're going to start out talking about the civil case. So a wrongful death case as a result of a motor vehicle accident is basically a majority of the type of cases from one element or another that my office handles, that we work on every single day. The elements of it are pretty simple. It is duty, breach, causation, damages. What do those elements mean? Duty, that the defendant had a duty to do something, usually exercise reasonable care or caution of some sort based on the actions that they were taking. What does a breach of duty mean? It means they did not do their duty. They broke it. They did not act reasonably. They did not act in a safe manner that a reasonable person would have in a similar situation. The third element is causation, and that can sometimes be the most difficult element. You have to actually prove not just that somebody did something wrong, not just that they had a duty and they breached it, but that the way and manner that they breached that duty actually caused the damages in the case, right? Because I can throw a bottle rocket off of this balcony right here, and I'm not exercising due care. I'm not acting as a reasonable person would. If nobody gets hurt, well, I didn't cause anything, right? So you can't sue me. If I throw a grenade here off of the balcony and somebody gets hit by a car 10 miles away, they are injured. And yes, I did breach my duty, but I didn't cause that accident, right? I did not. Well, maybe I guess I could have with the boom, but you get my point. If I didn't cause that accident and they got hurt, I did not cause their damages. And then the fourth element is damages, which are the injuries caused, the death that was caused, the money that was lost or caused to be spent by somebody, medical bills. You've all heard of things like this: lost wages, loss of earning capacity if somebody has passed away or is not able to work anymore, loss of enjoyment of life, pain and suffering, punitive damages. You punish somebody for their wrongdoing. Those are all damages. Usually that is money, although there's other kinds of damages you can get as well. In these types of situations, they would be going after money when it comes to Karen Reed. You can get insurance policies. Insurance policies pay up to a limit. If the amount of the verdict or settlement is within that limit, the insurance company pays all the damages. If it's above and beyond, sometimes the person, like Karen Reed, or if somebody is being sued, would have to pay that money out of their pocket. If they don't have it, it can go into collections. There can be a judgment. It can be held over your head for X amount of years, depending on the jurisdiction. There's all sorts of different ways damages can get paid. So let's talk about two of the elements I think are pretty simple in Karen Reed's case, with John O'Keefe's family being the plaintiffs as his estate in a wrongful death case. I have not read the lawsuit. I have not dug into it yet because while we've gotten some questions, it hasn't seemed like there's a huge appetite for me to fully dig in and answer everything there is to answer about this civil case. If there is, let me know and I'll check out all the documents. If you'll send me a link or where the documents are, Ashley may have already sent that to me. I'll have to look. But let me know, and let me know in the comments if this is something you actually want me to dig into fully and follow. But generally speaking, everybody has a duty to drive safely as a reasonable person would, right? And exercise reasonable care. That's pretty simple for them to prove in a case that Karen Reed had that duty while driving the Lexus that night. And then the fourth element, damages. That's pretty easy in this case. The damages done to John O'Keefe, his life was lost on that lawn. Okay. And while the amount is sometimes difficult to prove, it's easily a seven-figure case or more because of the pain and suffering. If he didn't die immediately, the loss of earning capacity as dependents, his two kids that he adopted from his sister. So the damages to me are pretty easy in this case. So duty and damages. Now, just because those damages are easy to prove doesn't mean Karen Reed caused those damages, which is why I explained the elements up top. So then we get to the two more difficult elements to prove. First is breach of duty. So driving drunk is a breach of duty. It's you should not drive drunk ever at all. That is a breach of duty. That's not acting as a reasonably prudent person would in a similar circumstance. That's pretty easy to prove. Now, the issue is, when was she driving drunk? What did the jury, res judicata means something that's already been determined by a higher burden. So now we'll talk for a second about the difference in the burden in criminal cases and civil cases. Criminal cases, beyond a reasonable doubt, highest burden in all of the land. Civil cases is 50.1%. Actually, even less than that, 50.00001%. More likely than not. Just barely cracking the 50% if you're weighing the scales here. So a much lower burden. So if a jury decides something in a criminal case at a much higher burden, then it's already basically decided for a civil case. Vice versa is not true. If civilly they would have found her to be liable, that would not count as a criminal conviction. So hopefully you guys understand that. So because she's been found guilty of OUI, operating under the influence, or DUI as some people know it, then that can be something that's res judicata in a civil case. But I would argue in that civil case that because of the lack of specificity in the charging document or the arguments made by the prosecutor, they cannot actually prove when the jury determined that she was driving drunk. The jury even asked that and evidenced that in their question. Was it 5 o'clock in the morning? Not when John O'Keefe died. Nobody argued he died at 5 o'clock in the morning. Or was it around 12:30, 1, 2, 3, whenever some of the arguments are that he did pass? That's a big difference on whether or not that's already been decided if her duty has been breached. So let's say they didn't determine that. Well, John O'Keefe's family would have to prove that she breached her duty. And you don't have to be drunk to breach your duty, right? Going backwards 25 miles an hour towards somebody, if they can prove she did that and ended up hitting him, that's a breach of duty. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't back your Lexus up and hit people. So if they can prove that, they can prove breach multiple different ways. Speeding can be breached. Texting on your cell phone and driving can be breached. The music being too loud and you being distracted and some of the things that happened, in this case, or that there was some potential testimony of, you can prove a breach of duty by a number of different ways just to show she wasn't driving carefully or reasonably like somebody should be driving. So you can prove that breach. Or let's say, for argument's sake, they prove she was driving drunk at 12:30 when they allege the accident happened. Just because you prove that breach of duty, like I mentioned earlier, does not prove that that breach of duty caused the death. So then we get to causation, which is, of course, the most difficult element for John O'Keefe's family to prove. That's where ARCA comes in. That's where Dr. Russell comes in. Those would be on the short list of experts I would hire. It should save you money if you're the insurance company, or if she hires private defense lawyers, which will be up to her. The insurance company usually provides defense lawyers. There's so many questions people have had. Let me know in the comments. We can do follow-up videos where I can answer all your specific questions about how these civil cases work. But I would absolutely call Dr. Russell, Dr. La Posada, and the ARCA guys in here as my experts in a civil case to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that Karen Reed did not cause the injuries or the damages or the death of John O'Keefe. And if I was the plaintiffs, if I was the estate of John O'Keefe, the O'Keefe family, I would not call Aperture. I would not call Welcher. I would try to find somebody better if they exist and can give me the evidence they need. Now, maybe Crosby will be somebody that can prove it was not a dog bite. All of those arguments are fair game. If you're Karen Reed and the civil defense team, you're trying to come up here and say, this is a dog bite, this is not a car accident, the same exact way to prove that that car did not cause this accident, there was no collision, is going at that third element of negligence, which is causation. That same exact battle would happen in a civil case. Now, what can also happen in civil cases is a lot of leverage being pushed back and forth. We think we're going to win. Look, we won the criminal case for Karen Reed's team. If you're the civil case, well, that burden is way higher. We have a lesser burden. We have new experts. We have different ways to attack your expert. And the leverage play can go back and forth to where both sides can maybe come up with a number and they end up settling. Usually you don't do that with an admission. Nobody necessarily wins. Some people can't understand why Karen Reed would ever want to do that. Maybe she'd want to get back to her life and not fight this case. So there is an element of potentially, your case is so horrible, you're never going to win. Our case is so great, we're always going to win. And then they go and they're like, we have some issues, and we go in the back room and mediation happens. I've done videos on what happens at mediation. By the way, sorry if there's freezing or issues in this. I'm dealing with hotel Wi-Fi. But in Greece, which is not exactly the same. So there can be some haggling back and forth, and eventually a settlement could ensue, or you can go to trial. It's different than a criminal case, some different rules, different nuance, different things you have to prove, and different burdens of proof. Obviously, different questions, usually more leeway in picking a jury and things like that. So it would be a very different process. If it went to trial, it'd be an amazing trial to cover. I would absolutely love to cover it as a trial. As a litigation, it's usually slower moving, more objections, more fighting over discovery. Did you turn this over? Did you not? Can we take this depo? Can we not? You didn't answer this interrogatory appropriately. You didn't provide all these documents. It can be a bit of a slog as far as litigation goes, but hey, it's what I do every day. So if you guys are interested, I'm more than happy to jump into it. I just don't know how much interest there is in it. So you guys keep me posted on that. Some other people have told me that Bob Alessi has put on his website that he handles 1983 actions, and you think Karen Reed might do a 1983 action. There's all sorts of notice requirements that we're not going to get into the boring stuff. I'll kind of jump to it and tell you what it is. Let me go ahead and throw this up here since I have it up. Here's a 1983 action. So let me just read this to you, then I'll kind of explain what it is in more detail. That's not great. Just leave it here. All right. Every person who, under color of any statute, ordinance, regulation, custom, or usage of any state or territory or the District of Columbia, subjects or causes to be subjected any citizen, that would be Karen Reed, of the United States or other person within the jurisdiction thereof, to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured by the Constitution and laws. Okay? So everybody has a right to not have their rights violated. Okay? And if you do violate that person's rights, you shall be liable to the party injured in an action at law, suit, in equity, or other proper proceeding for redress, except that in any action brought against a judicial officer for an act or omission taken in such officer's judicial capacity, injunctive relief shall not be granted unless a declaratory decree was violated or declaratory relief was unavailable. For the purposes of this section, any act of Congress applicable exclusively to the District of Columbia shall be considered to be a statute of the District of Columbia. Okay, so what does that mean? And what do I think would happen here in Karen Reed's situation if she was to go forward with the 1983 action? This is what people have been asking. Will she sue the cops? Will Karen Reed file these motions and try to sue the cops for what they did to her, is what people have been asking. So because a lot of people think slam dunk, easy, I'm going to start out with what's the difficulty here? What would be working against Karen Reed in this situation? And then I'll finish with what is working for her, what is good for her. 1983 actions are notoriously difficult. A lot of them happen with inmates who are either abused in prison or not given proper medical treatment. We filed a couple of those, handled a couple of those. We've gotten 1,000 calls for every one we think is actually legitimate. I don't know that we've ever lost one because they've got to be like pretty slam. It's sad, but they've got to be pretty much a slam dunk. Because if you think about it, it's like somebody doing time for something really horrible, and we're going in there to prove, hey, they weren't given proper medical treatment, they lost a leg or died, or things happen. So give this person money who may have been doing serious time and is convicted of a serious crime, and that's why they're in this position in the first place. Sometimes it happens like that. Or some other kind of more famous 1983 actions that you may have heard of. Rodney King, who was beaten by cops and took it to trial and got a multi-million-dollar verdict, although people thought it wasn't as high as it should have been, and they didn't get punitive damages, and it should have been worse, people thought. But regardless, that's a 1983 action because law enforcement violated his rights. Brown versus Board of Education, George Floyd, 1983 action. So you get kind of the idea and vibe of what people have alleged in the past. So how does that work with Karen Reed? Well, she would have to prove they violated her rights with their actions. And it can be very difficult because there's broad immunity. Sovereign immunity, a lot of people have heard of. Prosecutorial immunity. There's all sorts of immunities in place to protect people for investigating, prosecuting, convicting, and putting the bad guys in jail. Convicting criminals. We want that to happen as a society and as a country. So there's a broad immunity. If you think about it, every time, cops arrest somebody, they prosecute the case and they lose and there's not guilty verdict, if you can just turn around and sue them, then a lot of bad guys would go free. Prosecutors, law enforcement, everybody would be a lot more nervous to go forward. Witnesses would be more nervous to come out. So it is true, and it should be like that, and you should understand why these protections are in place, and they're really just reserved for the most egregious violations of the rights of the individuals involved in these actions. So does Karen Reed fit that? Some of the things working against her will be A lot of law enforcement, a lot of lay witnesses came and testified and ended up building the case against her. Grand jury finds, that there's probable cause. Judge looks at it, finds that they can go forward on her. And the prosecutors in this case proved to multiple jurors, according to reports, multiple jurors in trial one, that she was guilty of something. Okay. That doesn't put her in prison, doesn't put her in jail, that doesn't take away her liberties or her rights, that doesn't make her a criminal. Okay. But certain jurors voted that way. That's some things that can make it difficult if you're a lawyer, looking at this case, evaluating a case. And in trial number two, all the jurors unanimously found her guilty of something. Now, something is very different than what they actually wanted to do. And we already talked about the issues with that. That's clearly not what the prosecutors are going for. The criminal defense lawyers seem to be pushing for that lesser included to be in there. And they didn't even specify when the OUI happened. So some potential weaknesses to the strong parts of the case for the government against Karen Read, but those are issues in the case that there was enough evidence to get to where they got, present the case to jurors, and maybe convince some jurors that it was at least a close call. But what is working for Karen Read in this 1983 action? And if you noticed, some of the cases that I mentioned, what do they all have in common? Notoriety, high profile, public interest. The people wanted remedies for this. They wanted justice. They wanted to limit the power of the government and not let them go rogue and hurt people or do things that people don't agree with. Now, whether you agree or disagree with whatever position on any case that I mentioned, that's not what we're talking about here. But I wanted to mention a few so you could understand what situations this works in. It's not just for somebody that's wrongfully pulled over one time, right? It's big decisions where people's lives are changed or ended. That's why I want to give you a couple examples. And there's a ton. You can Google examples of 1983 cases to get more of a vibe with it. So Karen Read obviously has the notoriety, eyes on the case, potentially good lawyers. That always helps as well. And people wanting justice for what has been done to Karen Read. And that the government overreached in this case, a lot of people think a lot of different ways. What else does she have going for her? Well, what are egregious actions that violate people's rights, even if you prove to some jurors that she's guilty of something? Well, number one, planting evidence. Number two, destroying evidence. Number three, committing perjury. If they can go forward and prove that, again, we're talking civil, not beyond a reasonable doubt, a much lower burden in these 1983 actions. Karen Read can go forward and prove it was actually a dog. They smashed this taillight. You can never, with the same experiments we saw or tests that we saw in the criminal case, you can't bust the diffuser. The light wouldn't look like this. It seemed like listen, I'm taking an extra step here based on the juror interviews, but it certainly seemed like they were on their way to convincing the jury that taillight wasn't busted the way the government said. That glass didn't match anything, didn't make sense. That this was from a dog. She was innocent. So if that's all the case, are you starting to get to a cover-up? Sorry, not a cover-up, a planting of evidence, right? Because you don't need a cover-up to prove planting of evidence. Planting of evidence to try to get somebody absolutely violation, absolutely egregious. I think a great 1983 action here. But also, if you know who did it, then you covered it up. It's a separate. It can be with planting evidence, things like that, or it can be separate. Big conspiracy. Can they prove it? Do they have enough to prove it by preponderance of the evidence? We'll see, right? There's more here than in most cases. But also, putting all that aside, just horrible police behavior to violate somebody's rights. How do you do that? How do you show that? You have text messages, you have conversations, a lot becomes relevant in a 1983 action. But you also have the very ominous things happening with a lot of the parties involved. People getting terminated, having findings against them that they're biased against Karen Read in this specific case, conduct on becoming an officer. people getting reassigned, people getting demoted, people getting transferred, people getting put on leave, people retiring suspiciously, potentially. All of that is good for the leverage. And you got to understand, is this actually going to win? Is this actually something that's going to be successful in 1983 action in front of a jury if it gets there? That's up for discussion. All of the things I'm mentioning, if I'm sitting in mediation, if I'm talking about the strengths of my case as a plaintiff's lawyer, that is a lot of fodder for leverage to get them to put some money on the table. Maybe they'll make some admissions. Maybe they won't. Maybe the money will be enough of an admission. But to me, there's a lot of stuff happening in the background here that Karen Reed's civil lawyers would have to work with in an action like this, potentially, even though they're very difficult. They are not commonly even prosecuted or won by plaintiffs. There's a reason for that. And really, they shouldn't be. It shouldn't be easy. The government shouldn't be, violating our rights with this egregious action. So it's held out for very specific cases. Will Karen Reed do it? I don't know. If she did, would she win? I don't know. But we've said it once. We've said it 1,000 times in this case. This is one of one. This case is different. And I'd be interested in seeing what they put in. I think we know kind of the vibe and what it would sound like if it was these lawyers filing a 1983 action for Karen Reed. So let me know what questions you have there as well. And we can dig into it, just kind of scratching the surface of what potentially could be coming civilly. So now let's get to the fun stuff. For the people that just want to be here for the Karen Reed civil case, that's all we got. Now I want to get to the fun stuff and just give you a quick recap of Greece, right? So we flew over here. Nice, easy flight. It was awesome. Everything was smooth. No real delays. It was like 45-minute delay. No big deal. Thank God for all of that. We're here. We're happy. Things are going. We're riding high. Beating jet lag. All four of us kind of slept on the plane on the way over a little bit, a couple hours, enough to push through that first night. And we show up to the airport. We're waiting for our bags. We get 3 of our bags. We get my parents' bags. In other words, everybody's here. We're getting all our bags, and Maverick's bag's just not coming. We're waiting. Where's Maverick's bag? Where's Maverick's bag? And if we had to lose one bag, it's probably Maverick. He'll just turn his underwear inside out. He doesn't really care, right? 9-year-old boys, they don't care what they're wearing. He'll wear the same shirt and short for all, however many days we're here if he has to. Not really. He doesn't want to do that, of course. But if we had to, much better, him than Brooke or me or Whitney or really anybody else. So, it could have been worse, but that's okay. So we go, they find it, they locate it like that, which is great. They say it's going to be here the next day, which it did. It showed up right when they said it would. We have it. Maverick's got all of his bathing suits and outfits picked out and bought for him. So everything all grand and good there. Then we get in the taxi. We get to the hotel, show up, we get up in the room, and Whitney starts looking for her phone. We're like, okay. And I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. We took a taxi. He didn't speak English. We paid in euros, so there's no way to really track it. So we're calling it. No answer. She usually leaves it on silent. We're calling it. We track it with, Find My iPhone, and it's sitting in one spot for 30 minutes. Then it starts moving. I'm like, call it. She calls it. He picks up. We do our best to communicate. We're like, we're at the hotel. We give him the hotel. He's like, okay, I'll come here. What a man of honor. Comes up, shows up, gives Whitney's cell phone. Disaster averted. So we're off to a rocky start there. But then we start seeing the sights, taking the tours, eating the good food. And I just want to give you kind of my top 5 highlights with a few pictures here, maybe some videos. I don't know what we're going to end up editing into this of what I've loved so far in Greece and my family as well. We'll go 5-1. How about that? So number 5 has been, I'll just say, the food generally. But kind of surprising to me is they don't do lamb gyros here, or gyros as the white people may call them watching this, which is how I like them. So that was kind of a shock at first. But holy cow, the Greek salads, amazing. The food generally, amazing. The bread, amazing. But one of the more surprising, I don't know why I'm surprised, because it's literally surrounded by water. The seafood is some of the best seafood I've ever had in my life. And that's coming from somebody who lives in Florida. Okay. And, people watching this from Boston, legal seafood, you guys know about seafood too. The seafood in Greece is absolutely amazing. So food is number 5. Number 4, the beaches. So we've gone to a couple beaches. We went to and actually swam in the beach with the clear, crystal clear blue water. It's nice and cold. It's 1,000,000 degrees here, heat wave. I'm going to talk about more about that in a second. But the water has been absolutely amazing. The beaches were so fun. It's like really salty, saltier than our salt water, which is kind of interesting. Whitney loves that. She's like, oh, I don't even want to shower. I just want to leave this on my skin forever. I'm like, I want to shower immediately. It's kind of the difference between us, one of the many. But that was amazing. The beaches are absolutely amazing. The views. One of my nieces is like, seeing the water and the mountains at the same time is amazing because my sister and her family lived in Florida, moved to Colorado for a few years, then back to Florida. So they've seen the water, Florida, they've seen the mountains in Colorado. To see them together, I keep thinking like Hawaii. It reminds me of Hawaii sometimes, the beautiful water and the mountains in the background. The views are spectacular. Okay, number 3 is kind of combining the beaches and the food. Okay, the guy that's kind of doing our tour for us and driving the Sprinter van with us around took us to this small village called Tolo, something like that. And he took us to a restaurant called Maria's, and the food was amazing. The view was even better. Here are some pictures so you can see what it looked like. It is incredible to literally eat with these types of views. And again, somebody coming from Florida, we have the most beautiful beaches and views in the world. It's just different here. I don't know how to explain it, but it is amazing. And the pictures will do better, but the pictures don't even do it justice. That's how amazing it is, which leads me to number 2, which is something we didn't even get to go into and do, but we got to look at it and take pictures of it. And that is Lake Vulagmeni. Okay. And it's also known as the Lake of Athens. Was the most insane view so far. And because the views are probably my favorite thing, food I love, but the views have been my favorite thing. This was probably my favorite view so far. And we're going on the cruise in a couple days, and we're going to all the crazy places, Mykonos, Santorini, all this stuff. So I'm sure the views are just going to continue to be epic. But in Athens, which is where we've done this first kind of chunk of our trip, this view to me is the best view. And you're looking at it here on the picture. Lastly, this shouldn't be a surprise to most people. And I did this before when I was a kid, didn't remember it at all. Hopefully my kids remember it. Touring the Parthenon and the Acropolis was number 1. It has to be because of the history of it, because of how, we just don't have things this old in America. And how just wild it is to picture and think what was here, what this looked like. And you see pictures of it and you go to the museum, and you see what it looked like and all the artifacts there, but you actually get to walk it and tour it and see just how huge it is and majestic it is and the detail they were able to do back then. And it was crazy because it is so hot here. We are here on 3 of the hottest days of Greece for the entire year, chunk of our trip. They literally closed it. After we toured in the morning, we went at like 8 a.m. when it first opened. We toured it. They closed it, and our bus driver told us they may close it because it got so hot. So thank God we were able to do it. There were not crazy lines at all because we were getting some of the first people in there. It was quite a hike in the heat. It wasn't cool. It wasn't cool when we did it, but not hot enough to completely shut it down. So that is number 1 for me so far. If any of you guys have been to Greece, Athens specifically, tell me what's number 1. If you've been to the islands, we went to Corinth as well, which was cool. The canal of Corinth, whatever, was also awesome. One of my nephews wanted to bungee jump. I was going to offer to pay for him, but nobody would really allow him to do it. He really wanted to. He's 18, so he could have, but we ended up saying no to that. And I showed him that video like, let me tell you something. I was like, this is going to be you if you were going to bungee jump, because I think you would have chickened out. He swears he wouldn't have. It's George, who works at the office as well. You guys have seen him in the other video. John, you can flash a clip of him in the video where he almost won money for guessing about the channel. Do you really watch my channel short? If you want to flash that up there. But this has been the best part so far. Let me know what your best parts are. Let me know cruise tips. I'm going to be on a cruise. And I'm not an avid cruiser. I've been on, maybe 2 or 3 cruises. So give me some cruise tips. We're going to hit the casinos up. We're going to eat good food. We're going to be getting off and doing tours and things like that. So I'm excited about the cruise. I'm getting the high-speed internet. So, we'll see. Maybe we'll do a video or a stream from there. I don't know. We'll see what pops up. But we're just relaxing, enjoying the ride, enjoying the time off, not digging into anything people are telling me about Brooks Hook's case or the Preppy case, the kind of wild not guilty hung verdicts, the guilty verdict for Brooks Hook, and the Crystal Rogers situation. I'm not digging into anything new really, or going hard after any new cases at this point. If something huge happens in a case we're already covering, we'll see. Maybe we'll take a look at that. But let me know what you're following, what you're watching. Let me know the tips that you guys have. I miss you guys. I miss hanging out with you guys. I'm happy I was able to do this. Just kind of a chill, lax video, and keep you updated for the people that are interested in the vacation and what's happening here and why we're not having daily videos like we usually do. Hit that like button if you haven't. It'll help this video, do its work a little bit while the channel is kind of sitting a little stagnant to what it is used to and what all you guys are used to. Follow us on Instagram at Tragos Law and Twitter at Lawyer You Know. We're posting some updates on the Greece trip as well and some pictures. People have seen my mom post a picture for that. People are like, we haven't seen her before. The rest of my family, that's all here. So that's cool. I appreciate you guys. You're the best. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.